Hey everyone, it's a pleasure to have the first in-person meeting here for the Rapido podcast. Today we are talking about product analytics with João. It's really a pleasure to have you here. Just a summary of your career. You're currently working in product analytics at TripAdvisor. You worked at TUI in the past. You have this really dark history where you worked with me at uni places. So it's really nice to have you here and have you explain me exactly what you do on a daily basis. And yeah, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, of course. It's a pleasure. So starting from the beginning, how would you explain to a 5-year-old or a startup founder, which is kind of the same thing, what product analytics is, what it does? Yeah, how do you go at it?
Yeah, I think product analytics in a way is just like understanding how users use digital products. I don't know if a 5-year-old would understand what a digital product is, but I hope a founder does. But it's basically that. It's just understanding what a 5-year-old, what users do on your website, trying to find optimization opportunities, trying to find insights to create a better user experience and make your product more optimized.
All right. And I know you also teach a course called 1 Month PM, right?
Yes. So there's this school, digital school called 1 Month PM which target is product managers, and one of the courses is about data, teaching data to product managers, and that's the course I lead.
Yeah. So having this experience, also talking to people from many different companies, do you think there is like a moment where a company can say, okay, we need product analytics? Is it from the beginning? Do you usually have maybe some parameter you look at to say, okay, now it's something relevant for you to invest money, invest time in?
Yeah. I think I'm biased, right? So I would say just from the start, but like if a founder is figuring out what is the company product, what's going to be the product, is still finding product market fit in a way, then probably it's not the right idea. I would say focus more on user research, try to understand like who are your users, what they need, etc., etc. When you start getting users into your platform, from the start you need someone to look into your data strategy, or you'll be doing your data strategy.
Yeah.
It's either one of the two, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that usually the biggest bottleneck I see when it comes to analytics is the number, right? So sometimes you don't have enough volume to really do proper analytics, I guess, or A/B testing, which is like a huge buzzword, and founders usually think they can A/B test everything, and then the test can take like months before you have a statistically significant result. Sometimes they don't even know what it means. So usually, how do we approach these challenges, right? I'm a founder. I have a product that is being used by 100 people on a weekly basis. How can I still use product analytics in my day-to-day, take value from it, when maybe the volume of people that use my product is so small?
I think like I usually work with B2C, but like if you think about B2B companies, they don't have a lot of volume they can play around with. And it's still valuable to look at product analytics. Still understanding how people look into use your product in general. What I would say is keep it simple. Yeah. People try to make a lot of I want to track everything I can on my product. I want to look at every possible metric. That's not the goal. The goal is to keep it really simple. We were talking before starting recording about Arc from the browser company, and they have this really interesting approach of we want to optimize for feelings and we want to build for feelings. But they realized at some point that they needed to look at metrics. So they just created a super simple funnel, and they already started to identify funnel leaks and places where they can optimize. So start simple. I think it would be the main thing that I would say.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people should spend more time that they think also picking the right metric, because what tends to happen, this is also a recurring topic in the podcast so far, what tends to happen is you pick the wrong metric and then you start optimizing the wrong things, and that becomes the goal. And if it's not aligned with your real goal as a company, then that can skew your direction a little bit too much. Which are like the basics, product analytics, KPIs that you think make sense to add for, let's say, a SaaS product and then a B2C product? Yeah, what do you see coming up more often?
I think it will come down to where you are, where your company is. Are you looking for growth? Are you looking for optimization? Are you looking for revenue optimization? Are you just like in a phase that you know your product is doing well, it's profitable, and you're just wanting to gain market share? All of that will influence your metrics. And then what is your goal in the short term? And when you look at that, that's where your metric will be. You'll think, I want my users to do this action. Okay. So that's how can you translate that action to a metric and then make it more useful? Again, going back to ARC, because I know I think it's a great example. They want their customers to become to use ARC on a daily basis, and they use this with workers. So they will work 5 times a week. So their metric that they look at, it's called D5, D7, which is how many people use our product 5 times a day in a week of 7 days.
Okay.
So by
5 times a week.
5 times a week. Sorry, 5 times a week in a week of 7 days. So they kind of understand like how many people are adopting this as their main browser, which is a super cool idea and in line with their goal.
And how do you usually find these? Maybe we can call them. Actually, you can also explain the difference. Maybe we can call them leading indicators that maybe get you closer to what you want to track, right? So sometimes I am a SaaS product. I want to drive paying customers to my service. How do I identify the step in the funnel that tells me this person is likely to become a paying customer, right? Is there some methodology, something that people can read up on so that they can pick something to track in the immediate term, even though maybe their funnel for sales is a bit longer. Maybe they have a free trial that takes 30 days. So what do you usually suggest?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, because I actually talk about this in my course, and I say it's super, super hard to find like these leading indicators that will like guess the future for you kind of.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is just like keep looking at the data and try to understand like what correlations exist. Like if users start using more of something, like a specific feature, is their retention going to increase, for example? That might happen, and that might not mean that this engagement feature is a leading indicator. It just means they are correlated somehow.
Yeah.
But what I would say is just like ask your customers what make them stay. Look at data to understand if what they're saying aligns with what you have in terms of data, and then start from there. You'll get to a lot of like errors. You'll not find the right metric, but eventually you'll get there. I know like Facebook was 10 friends in 7 days or something like that. And they got it because they were trying and they found it. So there's no like secret sauce to find this, but you'll find it.
Yeah, I think that's also very challenging, right? Identifying when something is just correlated and maybe your ideal customer also happens to be a customer that does action X.
Yeah.
But the ideal customer behavior is not driven by them doing X. It just tends to happen. I think that's something that a lot of founders can get confused if they don't have the hang of what product analytics means. So, what are some resources maybe you suggest people can read up on or listen to or take a course on? So that they at least get the basics of these and they can avoid the basic mistakes.
Yeah. What you just said is super to the point. People usually say correlation is not causation, and that's exactly what you were saying. I've seen a lot of topics, a lot of posts about this for example, there's this newsletter on Substack called Data Analysis Journal. And if you look at that, Olga makes a lot of posts about correlation, about causation, and about data in general, how you can like make cohort analysis. That's a really good source of information. She also had some posts with Lenny on Lenny's, not Lenny's podcast, but Lenny's podcast is another great one, but Lenny's newsletter. So that's really, those are two that I really encourage to look at. And in terms of like more books, so more heavy stuff, I would say Lean Analytics is a great book, because especially for founders, it goes from like you're a startup, what are the metrics that you should look at for each stage in your startup? And then if you're like specific to e-commerce, there's a section just for e-commerce. So it's really good for someone who's starting. If you know like Lean Startup, the book Lean Startup, it's from the same series, not the same authors, but same series. So that I would say those are the main things I would look at to start. Yeah,
it makes sense. And as always, they will be linked in the description so that you can do your online shopping. Is there any principle, any maybe thinking methodology that you would share with someone that is getting into product analytics, like something it's like, okay, if you know at least this, you can use it to analyze all future tasks you will have in this matter or analysis that other people make. Do you think there are some key concepts that someone should learn as they're getting started?
I think understanding what metrics mean is really important. Like you were saying, you were asking before, what are the right metrics? There are no right metrics for any company. But like for example, if you're looking for an e-commerce company, you need to know all the steps in the checkout or in the purchase funnel. If you're looking for a subscription-based product, you need to know what ARR is, MRR is. So all of this stuff, daily active users, monthly active users. So know the metrics and know how those metrics were tracked, because that will allow you to understand the gaps in the metrics. Sometimes metrics don't make sense, and you'll try to understand why they don't make sense. You'll need to know that. And the third thing I would say is just like understand the levels of each metric. So some metrics are at the user level. Did the user did one action? So for example, we're talking about seeing posts on Instagram. Did the user saw a post or not? And the second one could be at the event level. X many posts were seen by these users. So these metrics are very different. It can completely change the way you look at stuff. So I would try to understand how metrics are created, how they are tracked, and then understand just common metrics like the ones I said before.
Yeah, I guess so. This when you join a new company or you're building a new company, this is really the first thing you should be looking at if you want to do product analytics. I think this applies also to any type of role. I think as a growth person, this is like really also key, understanding really what is happening behind the hood. Do you see any recurring mistake in founders or people that are getting into product analytics? Something that maybe we can help them avoid altogether? Something you think like this is typical mistake of someone that doesn't understand the core of what we are doing?
Yeah, I would say like the thing that I said before, trying to look at too many metrics, try to track everything. That's one side, because you'll hit this analysis paralysis. You have so much data that you don't know where to look anymore. You don't know how to move. And then you have the other extreme, which is you don't look at data at all. You optimize for feelings, like I just said before. But even optimizing for feelings, that's perfect. But even then, just like try to look at the metric that represents those feelings. For example, if your feeling that you want to optimize for is people love your product so much that they want to share with all your friends.
NPS.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or just track how many referrals they are generating if you have such feature. If you want to create a wow moment when they onboard, try to look at metrics in your onboarding funnel. So these are things that you can like directly translate into metrics. They don't represent the feeling, but they kind of give you a sense of what people are feeling.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And maybe also going more into the technicality of it, maybe it would help define exactly what is a lagging indicator, leading indicator. I think we touched on it before. What does it mean when someone uses this terminology? I think sometimes you go maybe with a consultant and they start saying these words and you maybe get a bit lost. So what is a simple way for people to understand, okay, this is what people mean when they're talking about this?
Yeah, so I would say like both a metric can be a lagging and a leading indicator depending on the context, but general terms, lagging indicator explains the past, leading indicator predicts the future. So that's what I would say about lagging and leading indicators. So in the right context, they can act as both.
Yeah, of course. So for example, let's talk about another buzzword, which is like activation rate, which I guess is something else that we could try to define. So the percentage of people that activate for your product, in which context would it be a leading indicator and when could it be a lagging indicator, for example?
A lagging indicator, I think in pretty much every context, you want to report on the past and you just want to say, like last month we found that X many people activated, so that's our activation rate. In the future, you just need to have a lagging indicator that this is connected to. So what is it predicting from the future? Like people who activate in the first week are more likely to retain. So retention is your lagging indicator here, and activation will be your leading indicator. Another great example is it's about churn. Like people, and this is from the Lean Analytics book. It's a really good example. If you look at customer complaints, you can say last month we had X many customer complaints. That's a lagging indicator, but you can also use it as a leading indicator. If you understand that every time there's a growth, there's a peak in customer complaints, there's also a churn, a higher churn. You can also say that this is a leading indicator of churn. So churn here is also a leading indicator, but
of course.
The customer complaints or the number of customer complaints can be a leading or lagging.
Basically, the step in the funnel is the same. It just depends whether you're looking at it from the left side or the right side.
It's the angle,
So it makes a lot of sense. And talking about activation rate, how would you define it? Like, what is it? How can a company or a founder go at understanding, okay, this is the activation moment for me, for my company. We touched on it a little bit before, but I think this specifically is something that also tends to come up quite a bit when looking at, especially SaaS, I would say. But I guess also in your B2C context is something that you use, right? So, yeah.
So I would throw the question back at you. I think you are like, in terms of growth, you know exactly like when a customer is activating your own product. But I guess that's not the same for every product.
Yeah, no, of course, I would say it's something that changes based on the product. So what I'm wondering is, do you think there should be any parameter to define an activation point? Because you could say, using Google Spreadsheet, for me, a user is activated when they create their first spreadsheet, or to me is activated when they write the first value in a cell, or to me is activated when they click the share button, because they know that the multiplayer aspect of Google Sheets is what makes it powerful, right? So what would you say are the parameters I should have in my mind to say, okay, this is a good activation point. This is what I call the activation. After this, I say that a user has been activated. Is it related to then how likely they are to do the actions that I want them to do eventually? So maybe becoming paying customers or retain longer? Or is it something more from intuition? I know that this is an important step in the funnel that they need to do in order to get to the next point. How would you look at it?
I would define it, and again, like I think companies will use it in different ways, but I would define it as the moment the user does what you want them to do.
Okay.
If it is create a spreadsheet, cool. If it is adding content to a spreadsheet, even better. If it is sharing something in a spreadsheet, that's even better. But again, you will look at this data and you'll understand probably the activation rate, if you look at the first step, is like 80%. This is extremely high, but 80% of people who create an account. And then the next one will be like 70% because the drop is not big, and then sharing will be like in the 20s. So what is that you want to optimize for? That's the question that I have to send back to whoever asks this question.
Yeah, I think this is a good way of approaching it, and also maybe focuses on the important thing, which is you don't have to settle on one thing, right? Just because activation rate seems like a one metric, but you could have different steps in an activation funnel. Like you could come up with your own system, and then as long as it's not too complicated, it probably makes sense because you need to adapt it to your company, to your users, to what you're doing. And do you feel like there is anything that this is usually the question where people stumble the most because it's the most politically incorrect one, but do you think there is anything that people in your field in product analytics, even when they are a little bit more senior, tend to get wrong often?
Okay.
Do you think there is anything that you see happening a lot, even with people that have more experience in the field, where you're like, okay, maybe this is not the right approach?
We get a lot of things wrong.
Okay.
Yes, but I would say like if I would need to select one, I would say communication. When we were junior, we pull data, created some dashboards, that's fine. Yeah. And then we want to up our game. We want to create some more complex analysis, and that's nice. That's fine. But analytics is not there making decisions. So you need to sell this analysis as a data product to someone. And if you can't communicate this data analysis, you're done. Your product will never leave your own computer. So that's that. People try to increase their complexity of analysis, but they don't know how to communicate those. So communicating analysis or communicating anything in data is one of the things that I think some people leave behind, and it's just like, okay, I know how to talk. I'll just say what I'm doing. Yeah. But if you cannot if you cannot make the other people buy in if you cannot get their buy-in on your idea, your data product will stay there. Yeah. So I would say leaving communication behind is probably the most common thing.
Yeah, it makes sense. It reminds me a bit of that meme where there is like the newbie and then the person kind of in the middle that tries really hard. So the newbie might be like, I'll just look at how many people sign up for my product and how often they activate. And then the person in the middle level would be like, I'm going to track the lag time between sign up and activation rate and how that correlates to churn rate 6 months ahead and overcomplicate stuff. And then the last level, the Jedi level, is just like, I'm going to look at signups and how often people activate.
Yeah. Keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it simple, stupid, which I guess it's very important paradigm that people should remind themselves of. And in this sense, I really like the approach of Amazon, for example, to meetings, which is mostly written first. Do you feel like that can also be helpful, like writing down beforehand the narrative that you want to present and maybe even try to have it presented that way? Because one thing that I also see happening quite a bit is you have people presenting slides, you have people presenting projects, presenting analysis, and because they are good at presenting or because they are bad at presenting, the result is maybe widely different and people start focusing on the wrong things. Is there maybe any framework that you suggest for presenting data, or I guess it's highly personal, right? It highly depends on the use case, but
I would say so. For example, for me, what works is like knowing what I'm going to say in each slide, if you want to call it a slide, and not prepare anything else. Just know what the main idea is, and then the content will come after.
Yeah.
Because if I prepare too much, I'll stutter. I'll stop saying anything in the meeting. I don't want that. So I think it depends on from person to person, and then obviously I think it depends on who your audience is, what you're trying to convey, etc., etc. One thing regarding to data here, there's these books from Nancy Duarte, and also course. She also teaches some courses where she basically teaches how to communicate with data, how to get the most information out of data and tell the story to your listeners. Yeah. So I think that's also a really good asset if you wanna explore it.
Do you think it helps to create like fictional narratives of a fictional user, or like are there other tricks that you use sometimes to explain maybe harder data, harder analysis to people that do not even have the cognitive power to follow your line, right? Because sometimes people would be able to understand, but they don't have 2 hours to listen to all the math that is behind your calculation. So do you think there is any proxy that you tend to use to really make it simpler for people listening to you?
Well, I think it comes down to what do they need to know. Like, do they need to know the whole process, or did they need to know like overall how it works? And then just like creating a fictional user is super useful sometimes, just to say like, this is their user journey, this is how we tackle them. And I've used that in the past, and I think it's useful because like users can, or your listeners can understand, okay, if I were there, I know how it would be tracked, or how this would impact me. So I think that's a good idea. And that's basically that I would say.
Yeah, makes sense. And going more practical, do you think there are tools, is there a tech stack that you would say it's good for 80% of, we can split it, 80% of B2B companies, 80% of B2C companies, imagining that they just raised a seed round maybe, so they have a product, they have product market fit, they just need to start figuring out more about how people are using their product. What are the 3, 4, 5 categories of product you suggest, and inside those categories, which are the products that they should be looking at?
I would say just like keep it simple again. Mixed panel, amplitude, Google Analytics, whatever works for you in terms of product analytics, works for your audience size, because sometimes you have just a few users, so one of them will be free, the other one will not. Sometimes when you expand, some will be cheaper than the other one. So one of these will definitely serve your needs. And I would say that's pretty much it for
Excel, probably. Google Sheets.
Google Sheets, I would say it's always good to use them. Metabase, if you want to create some dashboards, but Google Data Studio, Looker Studio is their new name.
Google likes to change names of its products very often.
But I would say like those,
or kill them.
Yeah, there's this fun website where they show all the
killed by products. Google products.
Yes, exactly. So I would say like just those, start simple again, don't make it a huge deal, and starting just with these tools, I think it will be more than enough. One of them will be more than enough.
Yeah, maybe also staying on this lower level, another thing that some founders get confused by is website analytics, product analytics. Maybe quickly, what defines the difference? What is the difference between, rest in peace, universal analytics and a mixed panel product, right? They serve different functions. How would you differentiate between the two?
Yeah, I would say like with universal analytics, the goal was clearly focusing in marketing people. So you have the UTMs and sort of things getting famous there. And mixed panel is more like how your users use your product, how a member is tracked across multiple days. Yeah. So is this more like focusing on the user, not so much on the traffic coming into your website? which seems the same, but it's not really the same.
Yeah.
With Google Analytics 4, I've never used it. I've heard a lot of it about it. I've seen a lot of
bad things probably.
a lot of bad things about how the transition is being awful. But I think they want to move more in a way of becoming something like Mixpanel, still focusing a lot on marketing, but giving folks the flexibility to have whatever event they want tracked and not just the common.
Yeah, exactly. So I think for founders, Google Analytics is definitely one of the top products that we'll come across when looking at this. That's why I asked the question, because I think that it's easy to maybe get confused between all of these. It's like, I already have Google Analytics, why do I need Mixpanel? I think that's a question that sometimes comes up. And GA4, Google Analytics 4, contrary to Universal Analytics, which again, it's being dismissed, it's trying to move more towards the product side of things as well. You can do both, which is great. I think really what pissed people off is there is no need to kill the previous one, which is a staple. Everyone was using it. Everyone was happy with it, kind of. And yeah, maybe that wasn't necessary. But yeah, I like it. I think it's really more about just have something that allows you to track the data, and then you can do the calculation on a piece of paper. And really just the important thing is how you look at the data and finding the right information in there, right? So
I would say so, yeah. Just keep it simple.
Yeah.
If you want to drink a shot every time I say this, it's fine, but yeah, just keep it simple.
Yeah, perfect. And so imagining that a founder listened to what we said so far, and they started looking into their product, and maybe they found some helpful things to improve. Now they reach a point where they want to scale this function. How would you suggest they go at it? Do you think this is something that maybe at the beginning can be also part of a PM function? When do you know that a company needs to hire someone to do product analytics?
When do they?
Yeah, like what is a signal to me that it's like, now it's time for me to hire someone to do product analytics, or when they can have a PM maybe that does part of that work? What is your take on it? Again, it's not something universal, but
yeah, but again, goes to the very first, to the very beginning of our conversation. As soon as possible, and when you feel you cannot do it anymore, and you need someone specialized doing that. When you feel like you're generating data, but you're not getting value from data, hire someone to do that for you. And
is there any good place you would suggest to find product analytics people?
That's a good question.
Other than your course, or like some job board or anything like that?
That I know of, no. But, or probably there is. I just want to say I don't know any.
Google for product analytics job boards. Yeah.
But there's this post from the Substack newsletter that I mentioned before, the Data Analysis Journal, where Olga actually listed a lot of Slack communities, a lot of LinkedIn groups with data people, and I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah, we can also mention that in the description of the video. And do you have any? Feel free to not spoiler too much, because some people then might use it against you. But do you have any questions that you tend to ask during interviews, or any quiz that you use to assess the skills of someone applying for this position?
Yeah. Because it depends on who you're trying to hire. Maybe it's someone more technical. Then the question will be different. But if it's someone more like they need to get value from data, I would always ask, and I think this is very generic. Tell me about something in your past where you were part of the project. Tell me what happened, why it happened, and tell me how you helped solving it. And just there, remember that I said communication is one thing that people are missing. The way that this person communicates the problem, it adds data to it. That's it. That's all I need. And also, I tend to do practical scenarios. Imagine that this would happen. What would you do, or how would you start investigating this? Something like that. And obviously, there, I don't care about the right answer. I care about how people are thinking about the problem, how they are structuring the problem. That's pretty much all we need.
So if you're looking to work in product analytits in TripAdvisor now,
that's easier
at least one question is you know what I mean. At least you know what to prepare. Then maybe it's still hard to answer, I guess. And you mentioned the technical role, so I'm actually curious. How does it work in TripAdvisor or in other companies you've seen in terms of the technical setup and the tracking? Because I think that's also something very challenging. Who owns that? Who should own it inside a company? Is it developers that work inside the team? Are they developers that work on other stuff and just try to, get their attention to help you fix some issues. Of course, ideal scenario, you would have someone dedicated to it, but is it something you see commonly? It only happens at a very big scale. What's your experience?
I think data should be treated as a product every time. So this applies to any size of company. Yeah. But what I usually see is like smaller companies, startup, they will have the engineer setting up the events. Maybe they will add someone in the future to manage GA4 or to manage Google Analytics, any type of it, and then just like taking value from it. Sometimes this person is also responsible for the tracking. So we're launching a new feature. This person will be there and saying, we need this new tracking, and telling to the developer. Sometimes there's this tool called Google Tag Manager where you can add the tracking yourself. So there's this part. But then as you grow up, you want data to be treated as a product. So you'll have the person logging the events, that will be the developer team. And then you'll have the data engineering team turning these raw events into more usable events. Especially now with generative AI, people are talking about data science and machine learning engineers. Those are a real important role in data, but data engineers are even more important, because if they don't get the data right, whatever you feed into a generative AI model will not work well. So you need these guys to be rock stars. Yeah,
of course. And do you see any technical setup that at scale is more that you suggest, using certain customer data platforms or setups of data lake, having your own database? What would you say is like optimal setup for a company that is serving maybe hundreds of thousands, millions of customers on their product?
Again, I would say set up what works for you. If you're talking like really tools where you want to save your data, if you're using Google Analytics, maybe it makes sense to use Google Cloud with BigQuery, because they integrate quite well. You also have Databricks, you also have Snowflake. So there's a lot of technical setups that you want to do, and then you can build on top of those. But the options are so vast right now that I don't have like a perfect.
No, of course. But it's good to see already that eventually, if you want to really scale up what you're doing in terms of product analytics, you need to have a place where your data is stored. It's your own database. It can be in the cloud, but it's like a structured database where you're properly storing the data, and you can also manipulate it in a way that makes sense for your business, right? I guess.
Yeah, it makes sense. For example, like I was saying, Google Analytics does store the data for you, but if you want to get more value from it, you can like stream it to BigQuery, which is Google's data warehouse. And then there you can use SQL to actually transform the data and make it way more useful, which is nice. Of course.
Do you think that a product analytics person nowadays needs to know SQL, or like at least is an important part of their skill set? Is there anything else that you would look for someone in this type of role, like Python? Like, are they all, I guess, nice to have? You can do a good job at analyzing data without the skills, but how important do you feel they are?
I think I love SQL or SQL, as people call it different ways. But I love it because it's super easy to understand, super easy to learn, and it has a ton of potential. But if you don't know SQL and you know Python, that's fine. If you know R, that's fine. Especially now with ChatGPT, you can translate, you can reuse some of that code, but you need to know some tool that will allow you to work with the data in more depth. Excel is not enough anymore.
Of course. I mean, and I guess to close it off, we already talked about generative AI twice. So I'm actually curious, what is your take on generative AI for product analytics? I'm actually not very convinced. So I was curious that you brought it up, because are you using it right now, or?
I tried a couple different tools. There are these tools that write SQL for you. Fine. They failed most of the time because they have this connection to your database. So they don't know what are the intrinsic I missed the word, but what are the complex connections between your data. They failed there. There are also these tools that tend to look at table and summarize, like Data Interpreter on ChatGPT. Those are fine. They are not going to replace any analytics team just yet. You still need the context.
It's like a faster way of writing SQL in a way, right? If you're asking ChatGPT, summarize the trend of signups in this data set for the past few months, it just and I guess one more layer of abstraction between you and the data, but it's kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah, but that's it. That's like where it can be helpful to you to create shortcuts for you. But then if you want to make sense of that, you still need a person. You still need someone to give the right context. You still need a person to like connect the dots, and that's where a real person comes in.
Yeah,
I would say.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, of course. I think maybe also sometimes now the trend is generative AI, so people jump into that. But AI has been very helpful in anything related to analytics for many, many years.
Yes.
It's probably one of the fields where it was applied the most, and there are definitely a lot of applications related to other type of analysis that you can do that I guess you also used before, right?
Exactly.
So.
Like anomaly detection and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Trying to understand what are the boundaries that to
linear regression and all those buzzwords that I'll pretend like I know what they mean.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. I mean, it was a pleasure to have you here. Thanks a lot. I think people will get a lot of value from this conversation. Is there any call to action that you want to run at the end of this? I know you, of course, already started by the time this is out, but it's something that you do on a like quarterly basis, or
I would say quarterly to like 3 to 4 times a year. So this will be my third time this year. Probably the next one will be already in 2024. But it's a good.
Who can sign up? Who should consider signing up?
Anyone can sign up. I have students from Australia. I have students from the US. I have students in Europe. So there's people everywhere because it's a live stream course. Okay. So everyone can be there when I'm speaking in front of the people. But they can also watch it after. Okay. So it's no problem if the time zones don't work for you. And then the second thing that I would say is that like it's useful for PMs, it's useful for founders. I have PMs there, I have founders. The target is PMs, but I have founders as well. I have marketing managers, I have people working in consulting companies. So there's a vast a diverse type of roles that go to this course.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. So whoever is interested can sign up, and you're gonna get, I guess, more of this, more in depth,
yes, definitely.
And more hands on. Perfect. Again, thank you a lot for joining us, and see you maybe in the future again.
Yes.
If we have more questions in the comments that people want to dive deeper in.
Thank you for having me.
All right.